siting board rule was part of the decommissioning plan. So it's a broader decommissioning likely than even the CGP has for Cohocton.
So we're talking $100,000 a turbine.
It's actually in the chart. So does the board have the decommissioning agreement? Did everybody receive it?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm hearing some folks maybe didn't. I mean, and I was under the impression that we were going to be on the agenda
We
today.
were here a month ago. I mean, the agreements.
Okay,
And
so, I mean, it's a little concerning
the
the board doesn't
decommissioning
have.
plan.
And then also with respect to the agenda, I came out here expecting, based on the communication that you and I had, David,
Right.
that we were going to be on the agenda tonight, and then we see the agenda, we're not on it, and Supervisor Hall indicated there was no intent for us to be on the agenda. So I'm a little confused, but nevertheless, sure, I can give you a copy. Does any of the other board members need a copy? That's the package.
Thank you.
Does everybody else have it? Yes?
Do you have an extra one?
Yep, absolutely.
I was not asked to put it on the agenda by anyone. That's why it's not on the agenda.
Yeah, we actually made the request originally in June, and so that's why my colleague Jessica Conley attended last month, so I was unable to make it because of the conflict. And so we asked again at the July meeting, and now we're here again. So
Sorry, I did not.
it's okay. The most important thing is that we're having this discussion, that that I'm answering David's questions, and if the board has any other questions, otherwise, hopefully we can still resolve this tonight.
Who came up with the $100,000 a turbine?
So-
Where was that?
So there was a decommissioning plan, Supervisor Hall, that was adjudicated during the decommissioning, during the full Article 10 proceeding. So over the course of the multiple years, there was an initial decommissioning plan that was submitted. There were comments that were received from certain of the consultants that represented the towns at the time. Hunt, a revised decommissioning plan was submitted. DPS staff had comments on the decommissioning report. It was revised. And so the dollar amounts that you see in the final decommissioning plan were decided on by the board in the order. And so just so we're clear in terms of the turbine amount, it's $460,000 per turbine. So I'm not certain where you were getting the $100,000.
No, that's part A
Yeah.
is the 100,000. Part B is the rest of
I'm not following you, I'm sorry.
Well, that's why I wanted to be clear on what the total amount was.
So the total amount for Cohocton is $3.2 million. So a letter of credit would be issued in the amount of 3.2, et cetera, 3,228,904.
For part A.
No, for phase, you're talking about phases, phase 1, phase 2. For phase 1, there would be a letter of credit, 3 letters of credit issued. One to the town of Cohocton for $3.3 million, one to Dansville for $280,000, and then one to Wayland for $1.1 million. And then for phase 2, there would be a subsequent decommissioning financial security issued to the town of Fremont for the amount that will ultimately be determined at that time.
So we're phase 1, Fremont's phase 2.
Correct.
That wasn't made really clear.
Okay, well, I apologize it wasn't made clear. It was subject to a certificate amendment that was made to the siting board. The siting board has approved the phasing of the projects and has approved the modifications to address the phase 1 and phase 2. So, but hopefully that clarifies it now.
With respect to the draft letter of credit form, how does that get filled in? You're asking the town board to, or me to do that and provide that to whom?
So this form is exactly
Is that got blue stripes and yellow stripes?
correct, and so you'll see the designation for the coding on those. Certain of the blues are for the bank to provide. That's information you can't change.
Right.
Certain of the greens, as I mentioned before, are going to be from Energy,
Right.
the parent entity, to provide.
And the yellow is up.
And the yellows, of course, are going to be determined based upon the final time frame for seeking a letter of credit, obtaining it, the amount. This will all get filled in as part of the submission to the bank.
Who does that?
The energy entities. And so what we then have to show is, once the letter of credit is, and we just actually gone through this, as some folks in the room may know, Energy's in the process of developing a Casadega wind farm. This very same form letter of credit was approved by the town attorneys for the towns participating in that project. The form letter of credit gets issued once Energy makes the application to the bank for that letter of credit, no different than the way you would with a mortgage. And the bank issues the letter of credit, and then we would provide the letters of credit per the siting board's order to the towns and to the siting board. And that all has to happen prior to construction of the project.
What is the expiration date? That concerned me. I mean, you don't know for sure how long your project is going to go, and then you got 2 years after you're done to decommission, if I understand that correctly.
Right.
So what is the expiration date that goes in the letter of credit? Is that
So
something like indefinite or to be determined or what?
the order requires that the decommissioning be maintained in place for the entire life of the facility.
Right?
So the term, I think the bank will limit us in terms of a term, but I believe the Casadega term was something like 40 or 50 years. So presumably the term exists for the entire length of the project life. But to the extent that in year 51, there could not be a gap because the order requires that the decommissioning be for the entire life of the facility.
Yeah, right. We don't want the letter of credit to expire
Sure.
10 years before,
That's
before
right.
you're all done.
So, and I don't know, David, I know it's very lengthy if you look through this, but this is specifically addressed in the order, in the discussion by the board on decommissioning. And
I'm
if you-
sorry?
It's this issue that you just raised is addressed by the board. If you look at condition 43 and 44,
You're talking about the Public Service Commission?
The Siting Board.
Which one? Siting Board.
the siting board issued an order. That order approved, that certificate approved the construction and operation of the facility, subject to certain conditions. One of the conditions is to have a decommissioning plan and letter of credit, financial security, for the life of the project.
Right.
And there's a discussion of the term in here, and how it cannot expire.
So what, all right, so what term then goes in?
Like I said, it'll be dictated by the bank. I believe that the bank at Casadega did 40 years, but David, I can double check that. We wouldn't know, in terms of a form letter of credit, it's not material to, again, it's gonna be something that's controlled by the bank, but it will be in place for the life of the facility, for prior to it.
Can we put in there life of the facility? Final expiry date?
Again, subject to the bank, a term that's allowable by the bank is in a financial instrument. Yes, I mean,
Well, I get
that's-
it from the bank's perspective. They don't want to be on the hook for 150 years either.
No, they're not. Right, it will be dictated by the, well, I mean, it will be dictated by the initial term life of the facility.
Do these projects have a typical useful life?
30 years,
30?
yes.
Current one's at 10.
So, well, there's a discussion of this in here, and in fact, it talks about reevaluating decommissioning costs as far out as 40 years. So, I mean, this clearly contemplates a letter of credit that's in place for the life of the facility.
Do you have access to that document?
Oh, yeah,
I would
absolutely.
think so. I've been on the PSC's website for this project.
Yeah.
Is that where I would look to find it?
Um,
I mean, it has letters, it has motions, it has all kinds of things.
Yes.
Hundreds of items, I think. I mean,
This one's not that, you don't have to go too far back for this, but it was September 12th, 2019. But, hey, David, I can send this to you.
September 12th,
2019.
and that, what would I reference that document?
I'll send it to you. I'll make
Okay,
it.
all right, thank you.
I'll send you both orders. So there's the original order, and then, as I was just mentioning with respect to phasing, there was the amendment order that was issued in May.
But you have had access before this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because you had
Yeah, it's
I've
publicly
had
available.
access.
to this document beforehand.
Yeah.
It's just, there
The
seems like
town
there's
board.
a lot of information in there that should already be known.
Yeah, this has been part of a, well,
Right.
the fifth 5-year process. And so I know David's coming to it a little late.
Yeah, I've had access to it, but I haven't.
Reviewing
Throughout.
it.
Right.
And the town board has been on the page, they've made filings with the board, and this isn't a new concept for this town. This
Right.
board.
What you're saying, if we have access to it, as actively knowing that this is coming up and it's a recurring topic and it's been going on, certain
Yeah.
members should be familiar with.
Absolutely. I agree.
Just a-
To identify who you are.
Yeah, I'm Courtney Lewis. I live on 10 McKay Street in Atlanta. So,
Yeah, I agree.
younger member here in the town of Cohocton, but I do pay taxes, so I think it's a great thing to get out here and get involved,
Definitely.
It's good to start now rather than never.
See, I just want to ask,
Sure.
what happens when the company changes hands to the letter of credit?
So, in order for if it's an upstream transfer, which is more what you would be familiar with CPP, where there was upstream transactions that change hands, the Public Service Commission has to approve that. If the certificate holder changes, then ultimately the citing board has to approve the transfer, and the new entity has to certify that it will maintain all of the obligations, all of the conditions that are contained in the order.
Well, we've had transfers with the current project that
Yeah.
the town was never even notified.
That's
That
actually,
was before our,
and that could be subject to a provision of your local law. Some towns do have transfer notice provisions, even if they're upstream, sometimes not. But it's usually, especially for a project regulated by the local law, which CPP was, as compared with the Barron Winds project, which went through the state citing process, that's absolutely a function of the local law.
Does having that for 30 years have any bearing on the fact that, like, the pilots are usually only 20 years? I mean, they've been here, a little over 10 years, and they've had all sorts of trouble with them, and you're talking 30 years with the project, be it the pilot's only 20 years.
We're here for the privilege of the floor. I'm happy to answer questions, but I want to make sure the board's comfortable with that before. The answer is yes. Ultimately, the pilot term, if the pilot expires, pilot's going to be up
Right.
in terms of the pilot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't affect the decommissioning of the letters of credit.
Okay.
Security projects.
All right.
Are you, anticipating the end of the local lawsuit before you start construction? Or site preparation, I should say.
So when you say, are you asking, is there a period of time in which the project construction can't commence related to the lawsuit? So I guess right now, as you guys know, we're here asking this tonight. We would like to file compliance filings. The year timeframes for construction are limited. There are certain restrictions in the orders that limit timeframes and windows for construction. So the intent is to put in compliance filings to be able to proceed when the decision is made to proceed. We're still waiting for a final order from the citing board. So, at this point in time, that answer is, it's unclear, but nevertheless, there's so many steps that have to be done between now and commencement of construction. It's very valid in order for us to ensure we can construct in the timeframes we need.
I understand.
did you have a question, Steve?
Yes, I did. I wanted to ask him when is he going to get a final from the siting board, and who makes those decisions for sight and sound and being larger units, for noise?
Again, I'm happy to answer questions, but again, since it's privilege of the floor, it's up to the town. Would you like an answer, Supervisor?
You can answer that.
So with respect to the question, I believe the question was when will the board evaluate the project's sound and other potential environmental impacts? The siting board has decided already, back in May, that the changes to the project, specifically taller turbines, but other project changes, did not have and did not represent a significant adverse impact on the environment as compared with the 3.5-year review of the project, the full project, in the original Article 10 application and certificate order. So the siting board has made those decisions already. They're the basis of the original certificate order and the amended certificate order. So all of those conclusions have already been reached by the siting board. If there are any further changes to the project, and I'm certainly not suggesting that there are going to be any, but they would have to be evaluated. Again, changes would have to be evaluated by the siting board.
One more time, you said there's no significant adverse.
So the board, again, subject to the town board's indulgence here, the siting board made a determination in the certificate order as well as in the amended certificate order that the project, the original project, meets the requirements of the public service law based on the conditions that are required to be adhered to in the order, and that the changes to the project that were evaluated as part of the amendment did not give rise to a significant adverse environmental impact as compared with the project that was originally reviewed.
So same setbacks.
So the setbacks are actually, if you mean in terms of distance, no. If you mean in terms of multipliers of turbine height, then yes.
That's what I was going for. Thank you.
So with respect to that question, the town's laws and many of the laws are a multiplier based upon height. And so if you have taller turbines, in essence 2 times the turbine height, it's going to be a greater setback distance. So setback distances are enhanced by virtue of taller turbines.
And blade width, right? Or are you going from the center of the turbine?
Tip height. So it's the height of the tower plus the height of the blade at the tallest point.
But that's not from the tip when it's pointing towards my house, right?
Well, again, it's in terms of the tallest point, I hate to get into the physics and the math of this, but the tallest point in which a turbine setback can be established would be the tallest point, the tip of the blade. So all measurements for setbacks are based upon the highest tip height.
Which is always
But-
wrong, and we know that. So thank you.
Well, I disagree, it's wrong. I think it's based upon the turbine that's purchased, the tower height, the blade length. I mean, those are just functions of the parameters of the turbine and math.
And we know that
David, what's your feel? Have you had your questions answered about that?
I'm sorry.
Have you had your questions answered about
Yeah,
that?
I looked at the form letter of credit and the decommissioning agreement and the decommissioning plan, and I can't speak to the substance of that. I mean, I have no way of knowing what the costs of doing this or doing that are, so I can't speak to that. But as
Just
to
to be
the
clear, David, just so you feel comfortable with, the decommissioning, the full plan is subject to the review right now.
I'm sorry?
The full decommissioning plan that you just mentioned, that you said you didn't want to speak to, and I understand you wouldn't want to speak to it, that's been fully reviewed. That's not subject to the board's decision. The board doesn't have to approve the decommissioning plan.
Well, I understand that this is not on the table, but it is part of the agreement. I mean, it's referred to a number of times in the decommissioning agreement.
This was a plan that was approved by the state siting board.
Well, I understand that, but I would think the board needs to be comfortable with the plan, in that the plan is referred to in the agreement that the board is being asked to sign. Now, I mentioned the plan simply to say that I can't speak to the substance of it.
Right.
And as to the form of the decommissioning agreement and the draft